So, Earth formed around 4.6 billion years ago, but it wasn't a particularly nice place because there were a lot of collisions happening with protoplanets, and it's actually quite likely that our moon formed from one of these collisions by a little planet called Theia. But after a little bit of time, it sort of settled down a bit, and it formed 4 rocky inner planets, 4 gas giants, and the asteroid belt. And you're probably wondering, so how did life actually originate in this horrible environment? And it's actually, we can't say like 100% this is exactly what happened, but we do have a currently accepted model. And obviously, if new evidence comes into light, then the theory will change accordingly. So first off, you have your abiotic synthesis of small molecules like amino acids, and just a quick reminder that abiotic means non-living. Then you had these small molecules joining together to form macromolecules. So for example, with the amino acids, they join together to form a protein. These would then be packaged into protocells. This is a type of membrane-bound droplet that will keep the internal conditions separate and maintained differently from the environment around it. And then finally, there was the origin of a self-replicating molecule that allowed for, I can't say this word, so inheritance of traits, and it was thought to be RNA. Now, all these stages are actually proven possible in labs, which is why we sort of believe that they actually did happen and we're not just making them up. But we do actually have some early evidence that isn't just chemical-based evidence. And that is in the form of fossilized stromatolites, which were sort of layers in the rock formed by prokaryotes. And some of the prokaryotes were actually cyanobacteria, which actually caused a bit of a problem because they produced oxygen. And it actually poisoned a lot of the organisms that were living there at this time period. So all our evidence of eukaryotes, at least single cellular ones, appeared around 1.8 billion years ago. That's what the BYA stands for, billion years ago. And then around 0.6 billion years later, we see multicellular eukaryote fossils. However, this is a rough estimate as we can't really determine whether they'd be just colonies of a lot of single cellular ones or actually multicellular ones. Then, by roughly around 600 million years ago, we see fossils of larger eukaryotes. Some of them would have been up to 1 metre in length, and these were feeding off the ocean floor bacteria, so we're still based in the waters at the current moment. Then something called the Cambrian Explosion happened. This was 535 million years ago, and it's when we see a sudden increase in the complexity of fossils, and you see some evidence of predator-prey interaction, so you see claws and shells. An example of one of these that you may have come across before is the trilobite, which is the weird shell beetle thingamabob. Then we see gradual colonization of land by fungi and plant around 500 million years ago. 50 million years after this, we see the colonization of land by arthropods, which are insects. And you'll probably have seen in most dinosaur documentaries that giant dragonfly that's flying about. And this is actually sort of true. So your insects would have actually been really, really big at this current moment because the oxygen percentage in the atmosphere was around 35%. So you'd get giant insects, which would be very creepy to see, in my opinion. And we also have evidence of jawless vertebrates in the oceans. 100 million years later, we have evidence of tetrapods colonising the land. Your tetrapods are your full invertebrates, but we aren't 100% sure when these became fully terrestrial, as it's likely they lived a semi-aquatic life for the first bit of it, so sort of dipping in and out of the oceans. We don't know when they actually sort of lived full life on land, but you can imagine it might have happened to avoid the huge population that was in the oceans at the current moment, because the only things that were on land would have been your insects and your plants and your fungi. Everything else was sort of in the ocean, so I would definitely have wanted to escape a shark. Then, by 300 million years ago, we see synapsids evolve, which are the ancestors of reptiles and dinosaurs. So that's a cool one. And although this seems like quite a nice flow of life developing and living and evolving, it wasn't quite that simple. There were a lot of roadblocks along the way. So the first one being around 252 million years ago was the end Permian mass extinction, which also has the very positive name of the Great Dying, which was when actually around about 95% of all living things on the planet were murdered. Well, not murdered, killed. But they weren't like stabbed to death. There was obviously an event that happened that killed them. Anyway, so around 70% of all land organisms and 96% of all ocean life were no longer with us. This was because of a lot of like volcanic eruptions occurring due to plate tectonics. There was a change in the flow of the ocean, so they could have become more acidic. And when I mentioned the volcanic eruptions, they weren't sort of like the month lasting or a couple of week lasting ones that we see today. It would have lasted for around 50,000 years. So, yeah, not very nice. Your next one is your end Cretaceous or KT mass extinction, which is what we lost our dinosaurs to. This was 66 million years ago, and it occurred when a massive asteroid impact happened in the Yucatan Peninsula. And we lost all our non-avian dinosaurs, which are your non-bird dinosaurs. So although this one's like what everyone knows about the most, it actually wasn't as bad as the Permian one, as we only lost 50% of them. However, if you think about it positively, this is what allowed us to evolve. So around 6 to 7 million years ago, hominids diverged from other primates. And then around 300,000 to 195,000, Homo sapiens evolved. So if you think about how far I went back originally to the billions and billions of years, if we were to actually put the whole cycle of planet Earth onto a clock, the human species would last for about 0.2 seconds. So we're not even worth a second on the clock. So that's a very positive thing to put your life into perspective of how important you are.